Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Mastering Dungeons, your favorite tabletop role playing game. News, interviews, reviews, shoes,
Yeah,
fingers, toes.
those
I'm
are the topics the
Shawn.
kids want.
Exactly. I'm Shawn, and I'm here with my most precious co host, Teos. Hey, how's it going?
It's great. See, now I feel like I can't make a joke about you readying an action to podcast and you got interrupted,
Uh,
so you missed a whole week.
Pretty much that's
So I'm
exactly
I'm
what
not going to
happened.
do that because you were so kind. So I can't.
Ah,
But it was
J-
nice while you were away on a work trip to have our great James Introcaso come by. And
yeah.
we talked about draw steel and new RPGs, and it was great. I know you would have loved to have been here talking to him because James is always amazing.
James is amazing to talk to. Thankfully, I get to talk to him every now and then, not podcasting. So you can never get enough Introcaso, but I'm
Yeah.
glad that you were able to share James with the rest of our listeners. And speaking of those listeners, they occasionally talk to us about things on their minds, and we are going to get to a couple of those questions and comments today, starting with Levi Moat via Blue Sky, who says, "At your 5e D&D table, would detect magic reveal an illusion without a roll? If my wizard casts an illusionary circle of fire around an enemy, and the enemy, casts or had active detect magic, should the target know if it's a wall of fire or a phantasmal force?" This I love this question because we could have 4 shows just looking at the various parts of this question as game designers. All right. We could talk about illusions,
Mhm.
right? And what they have been like in the game and what they're
Oh
like
yeah.
now in the game. We could talk about using resources and how the game expects you or does not expect you to use resources to do various things, and if you should be able to do things without resources, or if you should
Yeah.
have to spend resources. We could talk about the level of spells and what is meant to happen when a certain spell of a certain level is used and how that's supposed to play out. We
Yeah.
could talk about the action economy right. You could talk about so many things
Well,
here.
of all these things you mentioned, I just want to
Right.
say one, which is the detect magic is a vestige of the earlier editions where you wanted to be really careful because things could so easily be lethal that
Hmm.
detecting magic was a very powerful thing, even in a game where there were no ritual castings or whatever, where you had to spend a precious spell slot. And that tells you in a
Hmm.
game when it had so few spell slots that you would have detect magic so that you could figure out where the danger is, right? That was an
Yeah.
expected part of gameplay, along with poking things with a stick and rolling a stone into a room and things like that. And so the game retains that because you have so many players who identify with those things, even though the game itself has moved into a completely different type of gameplay or often different type of gameplay.
Right.
So that's some of this answer and question all ties back to how the game moves in one direction, but still has to have these callbacks that
Hmm.
maybe don't quite
Right.
fit like they once did or in the same way.
And what the time Teos is talking about is before skills.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no such thing as the Arcana skill,
Mm-hmm.
where that skill seems to do some of the things that detect magic
Yeah.
did or now does, right? Should you need to cast a spell to know if something is magic and what kind of magic, when you have an Arcana skill that should let you study something and then ferret out what the magic is, right? So
Mm-hmm.
just the idea of there being a detect magic spell and Arcana skill
Yeah.
are at odds with each other already.
Right. Right.
So let's talk about illusions in this case. Uh, so illusions, like we said, have been a thorny element of D&D forever. How powerful should they be? Should they be able, with a first level spell, should you be able to trick monster or another NPC into doing something that is basically life threatening, right?
Yeah.
So could you kill something with this first level spell that might take forever or many first level spells to deal with? Some people will say yes, some people will say no. There's no correct answer. It's just a question.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, the Phantasmal Force came up as a spell. So it's a
Right.
second level spell in 2024
Mm.
with a 1 minute concentration. So it can last for a minute if you concentrate.
Yep.
Let's look at the spell. You attempt to create an illusion in the mind of a creature. So it's just one creature. The target makes an intelligence saving throw. Failed save, you can create some sort of phantasmal object, creature, or other phenomenon that is no larger than a 10-foot cube, but is perceivable only to the target for that duration. It includes sound, temperature, and other stimuli.
Mm.
So, could you surround this creature with a quote wall of fire? Yes, you could. Only they would see it, and they would automatically get a saving throw.
Yep.
So if they fail the save, the target can take a study action to examine the phantasm with an investigation check against your spell DC. On a success, the target realizes that it's an illusion and the spell ends. While affected by the spell, the target treats the phantasm as if it were real and rationalizes illogical outcomes from interacting with it. And the example they give is if you put up a bridge and the
Mm-hmm.
person believes the bridge is there and they fall when they try to walk over the bridge, they won't say, oh, that's not really a bridge. They will say, oh, that bridge must have tipped over and I fell off of it.
Right.
Okay.
And importantly, they
So,
say if you survive the fall, right? So it's possible that you could have
right.
created a phantasmal bridge and they just die. And then
Right. So you can take a second level spell, pretend there's this bridge over a chasm, and get one creature to step off of it. And if it's 1,000-foot drop,
it's
oh, that
dead.
creature died.
Yep.
Right. With a second level spell.
Yep.
All right. Now, even if the target doesn't take damage from putting itself into
Mm-hmm.
danger because of the illusion, you can do 2d8 psychic damage to the target if it is in the phantasm's area and within 5 feet of the phantasm, or within 5 feet of it. So uh, the target perceives the damage as a type appropriate to the illusion. So it would think it's taking fire damage if it got next to your fire.
Right.
All right. So there you go. Second level spell, saving throw, and then action to study. Use the new study action for it. Would you even need to use detect magic? You could. You could cast detect magic if you believed it was there,
Mm-hmm.
and you would know it was magical. But is a wall of fire magical? If I cast wall of fire, is that wall magical? Or is it just fire?
Mm.
I don't think there is a ruling that says something created by magic is magical. Although we did get an errata ruling right recently that said
Mm.
if you can't dispel something that has been created by magic, right?
Yes, because if the creation if the duration is instantaneous, the thing is
Instantaneous.
created and is no
Right.
longer magical. It's like it would just be fire, for example. If it was a fire effect that was instantaneous, it is now
Yeah.
magic and cannot be dispelled. But if it's concentrated upon, or yeah, it's tricky, right? I'd have to look at the errata wording again,
Right.
but something along those lines.
So
Now, yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Detect magic, where it could give you a benefit, is if you did it long enough to get the schools, then you can that can tell you something, right? Because the let's see, is it, do you have to concentrate for a while? No, it's
For detect
yeah.
magic?
So it just is when you cast it as your
Yep.
action. For the duration, you sense the presence of magical effects within 30 feet of yourself. If you sense such effects, you can take the magic action. So that would be another action to
Right.
see a faint aura around any visible creature or object, and if an effect was created, spell learn at school. So
Right.
this is varied over editions, which is why I had to look it up. So what that means is that if you cast, let's say you're the subject of Phantasmal Force, you would
Yep.
have to cast Detect Magic, then take another action to determine, hey, this is illusion, not, I don't know if it's conjuration, evocation, whatever wall fire is.
Right.
And you would now know, oh, it's an illusion, duh. And then the question is, what does that mean? Which, depending on DM could mean, so you therefore can ignore it because you know it's an illusion, or you get
Right.
advantage. It's going to vary by
Right.
table, right?
Even if you know what the school is,
Yeah.
it does not, you did not meet the criteria of the original spell, which is use a study action to. Now, you could rule it as a DM, and as
Yeah.
Teo said, in any way. You could say, all right, you just know. Oh, you could make an arcana check to realize that this illusion is not a real wall of fire.
Yeah, because there are spells that are illusion as their school, but last and do damage or whatever. So it's not as simple as just
Correct.
saying like we might have in AD&D. I disbelieve. I rolled a disbelieve. Oh, I made my roll. It vanishes because
Mhm.
it could possibly have lingering effects.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And now you want to get really funky? We'll go to the
Yeah.
third level illusionist spell or illusion spell, major image. Right. A higher level spell lasts
Mhm.
longer with 10 minutes with concentration. However, if you interact with it in any way, if you touch it,
Yeah.
you automatically know it's an illusion. So that bridge now, when you walk over it, as when you fall through, now you go without needing to make a saving throw. Ah, this is an illusion because I've interacted with it and passed through it. And there is no mention of damage in Major Image. You don't automatically do damage with it, which sort of goes back to an older version of illusions, which are more the DM and the player need to suss out what actually happens and come to an agreement. Uh, so just bizarre again with these spells doing different things and not being handled the same way, even within the same rule set, within one level of each other.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. There is a lot of kind of wiggle room, and I think in the way both Phantasmal Force was worded and how it is now. It got a damage
Mhm.
boost in 2024. But I could see, this is the kind of thing that and many illusions were this. It does a fine job of honoring the long legacy of illusion spells having the capacity to derail your game session as people
Right.
argue, like, wait, can you really hurt me with this illusion? Because one of the things you would do in casting it is you'd want to deal that damage every round. And then the question is,
Mhm.
well, should they, based on what the illusion is and the interaction, and depending who you are, you'll argue yes or no whether you're player, target, or targeter. I guess
Mhm.
it is so
Yeah.
fascinating. It is interesting to see this remain, though. The nature of illusions has changed, as I said before, fundamentally in the game, and you see a lot less of this. Um, because illusion spells are now more confined. They used to be a lot more freeform, and what happened was
Mhm.
completely based on what the player cleverly thought to describe and the situation, and that would often cause the dungeon master to just go like, "No, this can't be," and erupt into arguments.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's moved somewhat in a direction that makes it
Mhm.
easier to adjudicate. But as we see, this interaction between the spell Phantasmal
Yeah,
Force and the spell Detect Magic is at loggerheads. It's at cross
yeah,
purposes. It's two things interacting in a
yeah.
way that, while it should make sense, doesn't make sense together.
So I think where you and I are coming on down on the final answer to this question is that it does not, because of the way Phantasmal Force is worded,
Mhm.
and the nature of illusions overall, it does not seem to just get rid of a roll. Like you're still subject to the roll,
Right.
probably, though it may vary by DM. And detect magic would require that magic action. So you're at
Mhm.
least burning some actions, which is right there pretty powerful. As DM, I would say, well,
Right.
second level spell, you already burned one or two actions from whoever has the detect magic. Um,
Mhm.
so maybe I would allow it to just go away because I've had my fun or whatever. But that depends how it's who's gonna rule what, I think.
Very true. Very true. So I'm very happy not to answer your question, but just throw a ton of other complicating factors out there. Apologies for that, Levi Moat, but that's where we stand with the 2024 rules.
Levi's great. All right.
Let's
Thanks for
get
that.
one more.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get Felix Pinteritz via email. My players agreed in a session zero, excuse me, that they highly value the integration of their character into the story, story arcs, and detailed backstories.
Awesome.
Great. But now I find myself in this situation increasingly often where I present something to the character or player that is highly relevant to their story, but instead of engaging with it themselves and asking questions, they wait until I basically spoon feed it to them. To what extent should the DM have to quote unquote force the players into a character moment? How can I help them get over their fear of engaging with the world and lead them to being an active part of the story rather than a passive one? It feels like they are just here to listen to a podcast sometimes, too
Send them
quote
our way.
unquote scared to take action.
Mhm.
Two of my players are pretty new to the game. Do you have any particular tools or tips for easing them, quote, into character? And I'm going to add one more thing to this. Uh, Felix gives this example of a paladin whose whole personality is I rush foolhardily into battle, get myself into trouble, and then after my friends get me out of trouble, I take all the credit for being the one that saved the day. All right. But this paladin, for example, came into the situation with the rest of the party where there was someone literally being sacrificed in front of them, screaming for help. And everyone was too afraid to do anything, including the paladin whose whole shtick is I just rush headlong into battle regardless. And so the a secondary question is this is what should I have done? Should I have killed off the NPC to show that they need to act in the future? What should I have done? What are my
Yeah.
tools there?
Yeah.
Uh,
Ooh.
so I've been talking a lot, Teos. I'm going to let you go if you
All
so
right. I'll
choose.
take a swing at this. This is really neat. And I love these kinds of
Yeah.
questions. They are hard to answer because I really believe that some of the magic of DMing is figuring out, and I love this about being a DM, figuring out what is it that I'm doing when I set something up to create the reaction that is either great or not great. And
Mhm.
seeing how that plays out is really helpful, which is one of the reasons that you and I often advocate that DMs should run organized play, because when you run the same adventure 5 times in a row and you describe a scene and you see one table not do anything with it and another one react to
Mhm.
it, and you realize, I did things a little differently, that
Mhm.
really helps you understand. Or you have two similar adventures, but the one of them did this thing slightly differently, and you get table after table doing exactly what you wish they would have done. Then you go, oh, that design did that, right? And so I would
Mhm.
first guess that something is happening at your table that is along those lines. There is a way that you're interacting that's not necessarily wrong, but it's not creating the evocative reaction you think it should. And even with the great information provided here in this much longer piece we didn't read out of the situation of the paladin, there's something there that caused this hesitation and didn't make it the clear thing you thought it would be. A thing I like to do is to have a friend or two of the players that I can sort of break that immersion and say, hey, that thing, how'd you think it went? And just hear what they say, right? What do you think the players were concerned about? Or, I thought you guys were going to rush in and immediately help, and especially the paladin. What do you think happened there? And just to hear what they say. And a lot of times, if they are honest with you, it'll be surprising what they saw from their perspective. And my guess is
Mhm.
something like that's going on. What do you think,
Yeah.
John?
So I think you're absolutely right that the smallest detail can really tailor how players
Mm,
react to something. I disagree in the sense that I think players and to a certain extent, game masters think they know what they want.
Mm.
And often they don't know what they want until they see it.
Mm.
And even then, they won't necessarily uh, admit that it is not what they wanted.
So you saying
So,
something like the paladin loves
right.
jumping into battle theoretically to be paladin-ish, but in reality would rather attack than save somebody, something like that?
No, but
What are you
close.
saying? Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that this player, I've seen players do this all the time. This is my character. My character does these things, it does this and is this.
Mm-hmm.
And as a story, it makes total
Mm-hmm.
sense
Mm-hmm.
and is fun and is right dramatic and
Yep.
comical or whatever as the story. Then as the game, the players say, this is not a wise thing to do as a game. This chess piece needs to be in this square, not in that
Uh-huh.
square.
Uh-huh.
So the story says my chess piece should be in this square. The game says my chess piece should be on this square. And until you play enough to have them see this, they are just going to think, oh no, that's what my character would have done, even though it's not. Or
Mm-hmm.
players might say, we want this really deadly game. We want to be pushed to the brink until you push them to the brink, and then
Mm-hmm.
they realize that's not really what they wanted. But it's human nature, right? It's
Yeah.
human nature to
Yeah.
think you want something, and then when you get it and it's not quite satisfying, you find other reasons why it wasn't satisfying. Oh, I did want that big
Mm-hmm.
piece of chocolate cake. I just shouldn't have had that milk with it, right? It's not
Uh-huh.
the chocolate cake that I wanted. It's this other thing.
Sure.
Uh, and so it's tough as a DM, it's
Mm.
tough as a game designer to A, understand what people really want, especially when they're telling you something else, or B, convincing them that no, what you really want, as
Mm-hmm.
evidenced by how you've acted over the last 20 sessions, is this. You just
Yeah.
don't realize it. You haven't
Yeah.
admitted it to yourself.
That could be.
So that's how, again, seeing so many players over so many years,
Yeah.
I've gotten that sense out of people, and I'm just as guilty of it as anyone else.
Well, and one of the things that happens with systems that give you a lot of ways to define your character. For
Hmm.
example, I'm playing Pirate Borg, and I played
Hmm.
it this Sunday. And one of the fun things to just sit down and go like, okay, in my head I have who my character is, but when you roll to determine your character, there are these various things that have happened to you in your past, right? Like my guy had at one point slaughtered everybody around them, some situation. And I'm still trying to figure out exactly what happened, but I'm trying to let that shape who I am while also trying to be the captain of this ship through happenstance. And then I'm a deserter and I'm
Hmm.
impulsive. And these various, and making all those work in a given session
Hmm.
is kind of impossible. So
Sure.
often the one that'll go away is like I'm only impulsive to a certain extent, and I'm only a deserter to a certain extent. And what I
Mhm.
think of is these may be things that happened and I'm ashamed of, but they just can't. I can't possibly use them in every session
For
because
sure.
I have the matter at hand to resolve, and I have other
Right.
things I want to do with my character. And your character starts sort of becoming someone else. And I think fifth edition had that same problem with 2014, right?
Mhm. And
Like,
for me, this question of what tools do I have to get players to play their character
mm-hmm,
in a way that they seem to want to, I always jump back to a game like Fate,
mm-hmm,
right? Because this was a problem that D&D has had since the first die roll of OD&D, right? Whether it's alignment or personality or
mm-hmm,
character flaws or any of
yeah,
those elements that have come over the years, it's what tools do I have to get a player to play their character when the game makes much more sense to them playing it this other way.
that's a great way to look at it.
And
Mm,
games like Fate came along to answer that question
mm-hmm,
because
mm-hmm,
in Fate, who you are is your power. you don't have power separate from your personality and your flaws and your connections. They are your rules. So when you have that paladin who might have in Fate this thing called an aspect, and the aspect is I rush into trouble whenever I can,
Mhm.
right? So as you're playing that game in the exact same situation, how would it play out in Fate? Teos, you're playing the paladin, and I
Yeah.
would describe the situation where this person is getting right sacrificed
Hmm.
in front of you,
Hmm.
but you're hesitating to act. So I would say your aspect there, Teos, says I rush into danger at the drop of a hat. So you are going to rush into danger, and I will give you this fate point,
Yeah.
right? Which is a currency that you can then use.
Yeah.
So there you go. Now, if you refuse to, if you play against your character, you're allowed to do that,
Yeah.
but you have to pay me a fate point
Yeah.
to resist that
Yeah.
impel, right? To
Yeah.
resist that thing. And so when inspiration became a part of 2014, there were a lot of people who knew multiple game systems saying,
Hmm.
"Oh, that's something. That's a way that D&D is going to do this." But it wasn't robust enough
No.
to do. But they still have heroic inspiration. So a tool that you can use to get your players to do that is to train them by saying,
Mm.
describe your character to me. Okay, your character's in this situation. You just described to me how your character would act in this situation. Sure, it might not be the most strategically sound thing to do,
Yeah.
but here I'll give you heroic inspiration if you do it. And so you're borrowing something from fate.
Mm.
You are giving them a reward for playing their character, and hopefully that will train them to remember that that's part of this
Yeah.
game that we
Yeah.
play.
Yeah, and it may be that your player has shifted how they think about their character and doesn't want to
Mhm.
do that. And so, but that's nice because it gives them that option while giving you a way to address that. I like what you're saying a lot there, Shawn. That offer
Mhm.
of inspiration is a neat, very 5e way to do it. The way I usually handle this type of situation is I would probably give free no action checks, which is
Mhm.
a little more controversial in 2024 than it was before.
Mhm.
But I would allow various characters an opportunity to see what their characters should see, which is, hey,
Mhm.
this sacrifice is gonna die.
Yeah.
And so I would say, make me a, some sort of check. Okay,
Yeah.
you can tell that the fire is burning so quickly. You only have a few rounds, and this innocent person will die. So you
Mhm.
may want to think about what you want to do there. And maybe they
Mhm.
go, I attacked this goblin in front of me. Okay, you made that choice. And at that point, I feel very comfortable with answering the question to say, yeah, I would kill off the sacrificial person. They die because they had all the information and that is what they chose. So the story should have some
Mhm.
consequences. Where
Yeah.
it gets edgy or difficult is when you don't have clarity.
Mhm.
If the paladin sort of wasn't quite sure that this was the state, that these were the stakes,
Mhm.
then killing off that sacrifice may feel punitive or
Mhm.
arbitrary. So you want to make that clear, and either whether it's because you say, hey, you see this heroic inspiration if you go off and kind of play the role of the paladin, but it's up to you, or if you make checks, whatever, some mechanism to make sure that the stakes are clear, especially for new players, and they can make that choice and then take those consequences.
Yep. All right. I hope
Cool.
that was helpful. Great questions there. And we'll talk at the end of the show about how you can send your questions to us. Now let's jump into news and commentary, starting with this little indie game called Heart Dagger something.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It's a
yeah,
spear heart, spear
yeah.
liver.
And Teos is holding up a copy of Daggerheart, which
Yeah.
was released last week. Daggerheart being, of course, from Darrington Press, the publishing house behind Critical Role. And what do they say? They say they have already sold out of all their books, even though they just released last week. They're already sold out in their online store. The deluxe version went quickly, followed by the regular one. Fans are have been active online talking about their read-throughs and their first games as they get their books. Uh, what else is happening with Daggerheart, Teos?
A lot, really. So this selling out is really interesting, right? Because in theory, Darrington Press would have wanted to have a bunch of stored extra books to sell off. And so selling, and the highest profit would come from them selling them directly from the store.
Hmm.
So to be sold out there and to just have what's out in distribution, that is pretty amazing. I mean, I did go to my local gaming store. I did crowdfund it, but with Darrington directly, but I went to my local store and I saw copies there. So you should be able to, travel around and locate a copy of the gorgeous Daggerheart. Harder to find will be that deluxe set, which was the first thing to sell out. But also of interest, there is a new website named The Void, daggerheart.com/The Void, where playtests are being conducted. And one of the things that happens when a game comes out is you're like, well, okay, but are they done or are they going to offer more support? And you can already playtest two new subclasses for two classes. The Warlock has Pact of the Endless and Pact of the Wrathful, and the Fighter has Juggernaut and Martial Artist. So we can already see more is coming to be playtested even. And so there will be follow-up products that are clearly not just like a setting, but meaty stuff, right? Character
Yeah.
subclasses and so on.
Yep. Now there's cards involved in this game. You can print out cards and use those sort of in lieu of a character sheet. What's going on with their card maker?
Yeah, that is really amazing. So June 6th, we will see their online card maker come out that lets you edit any of the 270 available cards. When you buy the game, you get the book and also in either a slipcase or a really awesome looking box, the cards. And the cards are gorgeous in the regular version. They have a little additional foil embellishment in the deluxe version. And those are like your powers, your species capability or ability, your I forget, there's another source, but there are kind of various ways that you get these cards. And so all of those are available in these cards. So digitally, you will be able to take those and customize them, whether it's you want to like change up the art, which I love doing for my characters, especially for online games, have my own little art that I show everybody. And then what's really neat is it ties into their community gaming license. So it was updated on May 19th to include Daggerheart. Surprisingly, this community game license is really hard to read. I mean, I've read a lot of things for my work and for RPGs, and there are some parts that I would need to go over with a lawyer because it's hard for me to figure out exactly what they're saying there. But one of the things that it has is, this is not like we've talked about the OGL, can never go away. Well, this one can be updated. Um,
Mhm.
Now, if it gets updated, just as if the OGL had been reversioned or whatever, you can still sell a product made with the old one. But what they say here explicitly is if you ever update that product, modify it in any way, then you must use the new license, or any new product must use the latest license available. Not necessarily a problem, but it's just indicative of when companies look at these things, they go, yeah, maybe we want to protect ourselves in various ways. Um,
Mhm.
but one of the things that's neat is cards you make are part of this license. So you can use their online card maker, make your own cards to then put into products that you sell. And that's pretty neat.
Indeed. So we'll keep an eye on that. I think you and I will be playing it at some point in the next couple of weeks, and
Yeah.
I'm sure we will have more to talk about. Maybe even one or more of our main segments may come back and look at Daggerheart.
Ooh.
Further news here, Lee Gold has published the final Alarums and Excursions.
Hmm.
Lee first published this zine, or APA as it's sometimes called Alarums and Excursions in 1975. So wrap your mind around that. A year after the original D&D was released. Lee has been publishing nonstop for 50 years, missing only two monthly issues during that time, but now has had to cease publication due to her ailing eyesight.
Hmm.
Uh, A&E won numerous Best Amateur Magazine awards in the 80s and 90s, including being inducted into the Origins Hall of Fame just a few short years ago. This zine has been influential from the start, influential to not just D&D, but other RPGs covered in those pages. A&E began at a time when the Amateur Press Association, APA, emerged as a collaborative way for fans and authors to get work bundled together and save on costs and reaching a larger audience. So, Teos, which was your experience with A&E?
So I can say that I've seen a couple like that came my way online or that people talked about, but it was not a part of my life. I learned about alarms and excursions by reading about the Glorantha setting or
Mhm.
DM David's articles, things like that, and then John Peterson capturing, as he does so well in his books, how this is the gold standard for how fans were tinkering with D&D from the very beginning with
Mhm.
strong opinions about the game. I mean, they read things
Yep.
that make today's flames look very comparable, right? It's not
Yeah.
like it was a kind olden days. No, they'll talk about what trash the Greyhawk supplement was, or Blackmore. Complain about anything. Um, so these APAs were a critical place where fans came together and created things. And in the first early days, Gary Gygax was saying, great, I love all this community creation and all this. And he, took I think it was the Bard class or some class that
Mhm.
somebody created and kind of just used it. Thanks so much for that. I'll publish that now. But then as people began to do things he didn't like, we got well, yes, please create, but not that way. And no, you're wrong because, and well, what D&D is not that, it's this other thing. And John Peterson really argues that what AD&D became, and the reason it's such a bizarre tome full of all these sub rules, is as an attempt to counter the vast speed at which all of these creators, including in Alarms and Excursions, were populating the game with what it could be. And he was hedging against that, right? And of all the voices in that area, Lee Gold was far and away the most influential. It'd be hard to argue for anyone else's voice to be that great. DM David calls Lee the second most influential in the year of 1976. Greater than anyone else who was working on the actual game after
Mhm.
Gary Gygax. And there's also a stunning account, and we should say, right, Lee is a woman, and the first time she spoke with Gary Gygax, there is an account of how this call went, and it's, this is Gary Gygax. I'd like to speak to Lee Gold. I'm Lee Gold, I said. I gather you got the copy of A&E I sent you. You're a woman, says Gary. That's right, I said, and I told him how much we all loved playing D&D and how grateful we were to him for writing it. You're a woman, he said. I wrote some bad things about women Warbit gamers once. You don't need to feel embarrassed, I said. I haven't read them. You're a woman, he said. We didn't seem to be getting anywhere, so I told him goodbye and hung up. So, really, like, on behalf of all creators out there, like,
Mhm.
thank you to Lee Gold, right, for amazing leadership in the hobby, for persevering despite, how many people would have interaction like that and just go, I'm out, right? Goodbye,
Mhm.
hobby. And instead, 50 years of publishing this zine that so many people failed to do anything like that with any consistency, to only miss
Right.
2 months is unbelievable, right? And I'm sure that if she could, if her eyes allowed, she would be at it still. So,
Yeah.
yeah, tip my hat to that. That's incredible.
Tip of the hat to legal.
Yeah.
And tip of the hat to all the DMs out there who might be running games at Gen Con. Uh, Gen Con this year, signups have started, and Bald Man Games is seeking DMs. Events under the BMG banner are selling out quickly. Signups are now live for Gen Con Indy and for DMs.
Mhm.
Gen Con Indy is in obviously Indianapolis, Indiana, July 31st to August 3rd. And there's a link in our show notes to the Bald Man Games website where you can sign up to DM any and all of the offerings under that umbrella, including the new Legends of Greyhawk campaign, the new I'm writing it right now. What's it called? Grim Hunt campaign from Bald Man Games in the Grim Hollow setting. Learn to play events, introductory adventures, all of that. And you can never have enough DMs at Gen Con because the tickets will sell out if you put them into the system.
Yeah.
So
Fantastic.
it is a
And
great experience.
Mhm.
I can't recommend it highly enough. Go out there, show some people some fun. They are just happy to be playing. Very few people get too upset about, game masters. They want to have their fun.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a great experience to get out there and do.
And there should be some great adventures. You're working on things. There are adventures you already wrote that are out there. A number of the folks from our Discord have talked about how they are writing one of the Legends of Greyhawk adventures, which is very fun to
Yep.
see. So shout out to everybody involved in that. And this should be a great time in terms of the adventures being of really high quality.
hmm I will tell you that being written, the Grim Hunt, Grim Hollow campaign is myself, uh, Greg Marks,
Mm.
Andy Demps,
Wow.
Eric Bengi, and Savannah McIntyre. So all of them are going to be written by people who have done this once or twice.
Yeah, I think Shu has something. Amanda Leftridge has been
Yep.
announced as writing one of them. So a lot of folks there. Yeah, incredible.
And if you are worried about player safety at your table, we have now not just the deck of player safety from friend of the show, Tom Nelson, we have the digital deck of player safety. So, as we've discussed on the show before, the deck of player safety is a deck of cards that you can hand out to your table, and people can go through the deck and choose anything that may be a trigger for them. Or they can pick the card that says anything goes. And that way they can anonymously deal give you back a card, and they can even write something on blank
Mhm.
cards to let you know anonymously things that you should be aware of as the game master. Well, all of this has now been done digitally.
Yeah.
uh, we have a link in the show notes. It's digital.deckofplayersafety.com. And everything I just described can be done digitally, where the game master is given a link to send to the players. The players will go through the deck. They will choose anything that they wish, and then the game master will get those cards back
Yep.
and be able to share them with the rest of the group, so everyone knows what issues others may have.
Yeah, I gave it a quick run through, and to do that, if anybody's interested, you can go to that site, start a session, and then you can it gives you a link that you give out to your players. So it's perfect for online games. You can say, "Hey, everybody, go to this site and choose a card." And if you want to mimic it, you can use various browsers, including some in incognito mode, so it perceives it as
Right.
another user. And so I opened up 3 browsers and put in that link because you need a minimum of 3 players so that there's some anonymity. Um, and then you choose your cards, and you can even create a custom card that then shows up, and then so you submit that. You've got a little time where you can modify it. The DM at some point goes, "All right, everybody, give me their cards, yes," and then they can hit lock, and now they see the results of all those cards, and it's great. I use them in my game, and it's in my physical game, and it's great. Like I'm always surprised by what comes up, and it often modifies how I run a campaign because I go, okay, that topic, not something they want, right? I've got a friend who doesn't like spiders, and so if they are playing with me, I'm gonna take that out,
Mhm.
change it to
Yep,
something else.
for sure. Uh, we have a new RPG adventure from Matt Forbeck, of all people, coming from Random House. What could this game be, you ask? It is a Minecraft RPG by Matt and I believe his son Marty.
Yeah, Marty.
Uh, So, what does this game allow you to do? You make crucial decisions, craft powerful items, roll dice to battle mobs, and explore the overworld on your epic journey to discover and destroy the mysterious temple of the Charged Creeper. What's in the book? Complete adventure with a bestiary, a collection of perilous adventure locations, 4 dice to help or hurt you as you battle foes, and a removable character sheet and rules reference to help you track your heroic progress, or let you play with a friend as your narrator. I have not looked at this game yet, but anything from Matt, is going to be quality and interesting.
Yeah, and I think the price point is something like $20, which is just great for being out there on a shelf that, somebody can
Yep.
jump into RPGs and find them this way. So really cool to see.
Awesome. From something really cool to see to something regretful, WizKids has apologized and provided refunds for their Baldur's Gate 3 minis. Teos, this is all you.
Well, I took a while to cover this because I don't want to be negative, but I think it's been a big enough and interesting enough story that's worth just quickly mentioning. In that, WizKids on its website said they apologize for the online comments they've seen around their visible set of minis, a set of 6 or so Baldur's Gate 3 themed minis that all come in there. And I guess as fans are buying them, many of them purchasing it online and maybe hadn't quite looked at it. When they look at the faces of these characters or the paint jobs, they're going, oh, these are terrible. And I've seen some online pictures, and yeah, they're terrible. And part of it is the sculpts are thinner than ever, right? So the very thin, small faces, small arms, small area for clothing. And so the details, the paint just botches over. Their faces look terrible. They are offering refunds if you purchased via their site. You can return it to a retailer for a refund as well, and contact them if you have issues. The link is on our show notes, or you can find it at WizKids.com. But what's surprising to me, and I went to a forum where longtime collectors go, and they had the same opinion that I did overall, which is the quality of these minis is a quality level that you find in a number of sets WizKids has released over the last 5 years or so. As they've gotten into these smaller, lighter miniatures, there is less area to try to paint a face or whatever. And this kind of bad mini is sadly common. And it's not like you just have it happen with the easy to find minis. Like, you can have a very rare miniature that just looks atrocious or shameful. So I wonder whether Baldur's Gate 3 brought in people that maybe expected the quality you might find for other video games of collectibles. Mm-hmm. And they found this level of quality and reacted very poorly. I'm glad Wizards is doing something about it, but I'd like to see them do something about all of their sets that have ended up like this, because this is not, again, uncommon level quality. And
yeah, to be clear, it's WizKids, not Wizards.
Yes, WizKids. Did I say Wizards?
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. I just want to make sure.
Sorry.
Yes.
No, it is WizKids. WizKids has the license. This is not a Wizards product. And I note also, just relatedly, that WizKids has had 50% off sales on many mini products recently, including big, expensive blind box sets. So they somehow are able to do that. They have laid off several employees. I don't know what's going on over there, but it would be great if we could get higher quality minis across the board.
Mm-hmm. Something that's high quality is our creator corner this week, The Sand Marches. Jess Heinig has released an enormous fan supplement called The Sand Marches for the Dark Sun setting. It's a free supplement that brings a West Marches style of play to Dark Sun, clocking in at 377 pages based on the original box set used the second edition rules.
Yeah, incredible. And Shawn, I just want to mention very quickly one last thing, because it is timed, and that is that this week there's a thing called the 5-Room Dungeon Jam. It's similar to that Monster of the Week that we covered recently. Gotcha. And this is a bunch of YouTube creators gathering together to discuss the concept championed by John 4 of a 5-room dungeon. Look it up if you're not familiar with it. It's kind of a neat way to think of providing a full experience in just 5 rooms. So we've got a playlist link in our show notes, or you can go out and search for Dungeon Jam 2025 on YouTube. That'll find you the channel that has the playlist with all these videos, including I've got one that is on the concept of a 5-room dungeon as a construct with which we could teach any RPG. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That was our news and commentary.